The flickering neon sign of the rusty mug cast long shadows across the rain-slicked streets of Seattle as I stared out the window, nursing a lukewarm coffee. My name is Alaric, and until a few weeks ago I thought I had it all. A beautiful home overlooking Puget Sound, a fulfilling job as an IT specialist, and a wife, Bronte, whom I adored. We had been married for 15 years, a milestone I had celebrated with a surprise trip to Napa Valley, a gesture that now felt like a cruel joke. It started subtly. Bronte, a vibrant and outgoing marketing executive, began working late more frequently. Business trips to Portland and Vancouver became commonplace. I chalked it up to her ambitious nature, her drive to climb the corporate ladder. I was proud of her success, always eager to hear about her latest projects and presentations. But then came the whispers, the nagging feeling that something was amiss. Bronte's laughter, once a constant melody in our home, became strained, forced. Her touch, once warm and reassuring, felt distant, almost perfunctory. I remember one evening in particular. It was a Tuesday and I had rushed home from work, eager to share some good news about a project I had been leading. I walked into the house calling out Bronte's name, but there was no response. The house was eerily silent. I found her in the living room, bathed in the soft glow of the television, a glass of wine in her hand. She barely acknowledged my presence, her eyes glued to the screen. "Hey," I said, trying to inject some enthusiasm into my voice. "I have some exciting news." She turned to me, her expression blank. "Oh," she said, her voice flat. "What is it?" I told her about the successful launch of the new software, the positive feedback from the clients, the potential for a promotion. She listened without saying a word, her eyes devoid of any emotion. When I finished, she simply nodded and turned back to the television. "That's nice, Alaric," she said, her voice barely audible. "I'm glad for you." Her indifference stung. It was as if she was going through the motions, playing the role of a supportive wife, but her heart wasn't in it. That night I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I tried to dismiss my suspicions, to convince myself that I was being paranoid, that Bronte was simply stressed from work. But the feeling persisted, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I started paying closer attention to her phone, her emails, her whereabouts. I hated myself for it, for invading her privacy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being deceived. The first real clue came in the form of a misplaced receipt. I was doing laundry one Saturday morning when I found a crumpled piece of paper in the pocket of Bronte's jacket. It was a receipt from a small Italian restaurant in downtown Seattle, a place we had never been to together. The date on the receipt was last Tuesday, the same night she had been so distant and preoccupied. The receipt was for 2 entrees and a bottle of expensive wine. My heart sank. Who had she been with? I confronted her that evening, presenting the receipt as evidence. She initially denied everything, claiming that it must have been a mistake, that she had been at a work dinner, but her eyes betrayed her. She couldn't maintain eye contact, her hands trembled and her voice wavered. Finally, after relentless questioning, she broke down. "Okay, fine," she said, her voice choked with tears. "I went to dinner with someone." My blood ran cold. "Who?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She hesitated for a moment, then blurted out the name. "Lysander. He's a colleague from work." Lysander. The name tasted like poison on my tongue. He was a smooth-talking, charismatic account manager who had joined Bronte's team a few months ago. I had met him a few times at company events, and I had always felt a sense of unease around him. He was too charming, too attentive, too eager to please. "What happened at dinner?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. She claimed that it was just a friendly meeting, that they were discussing a new marketing strategy, but I didn't believe her. The expensive wine, the intimate setting, the secrecy, it all pointed to something more. "Did you sleep with him?" I asked, the question hanging in the air like a death sentence. She didn't answer. She simply looked down, her face flushed with shame. Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. The world seemed to spin around me. My vision blurred, my ears rang, and my chest felt like it was being crushed by a heavy weight. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, had betrayed me in the most profound way imaginable. I felt like I was suffocating, drowning in a sea of despair. I stumbled out of the house, gasping for air, and walked aimlessly through the streets of Seattle, the rain washing away my tears. I spent the next few days in a daze, unable to eat, sleep, or think clearly. I called in sick to work, unable to face my colleagues, my friends, my life. I replayed the events of the past few months in my mind, searching for clues, for signs that I had missed. I felt like a fool, a naive idiot who had been blind to the truth. How could I have been so oblivious? How could I have let this happen? I eventually decided that I needed to confront Bronte again, to demand answers, to understand why she had done this to me. I returned to the house, my heart pounding in my chest, and found her sitting in the living room looking pale and drawn. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cold and hard. She nodded, her eyes filled with fear and regret. "I know," she said softly. "I'm so sorry, Alaric. I never meant to hurt you." Her apology felt hollow, insincere. It was as if she was reciting a script, saying the words she thought I wanted to hear. "Why?" I asked, my voice rising in anger. "Why did you do this?" "What did I do to deserve this?" She hesitated for a moment, then said, "It's not you, Alaric, it's me. I've been feeling restless lately, like I'm missing something in my life. Lysander, he makes me feel alive, excited. He understands me in a way that you don't." Her words were like a knife twisting in my gut. She was blaming me for her infidelity, accusing me of being boring, predictable, unfulfilling. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So what?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're just going to throw away 15 years of marriage for some cheap thrill, for some fleeting moment of excitement?" She didn't answer. She simply looked away, her face etched with guilt and shame. I knew then that there was no hope for reconciliation. The trust was broken, the love was gone, and the damage was irreparable. "I want a divorce," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. She nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "I understand," she said softly. "I'll move out as soon as possible." The divorce was swift and brutal. Lawyers were hired, assets were divided, and bitter accusations were exchanged. The house, the symbol of our life together, was sold. I moved into a small apartment in downtown Seattle, a sterile and impersonal space that felt like a prison. I spent my days at work, going through the motions, and my nights alone, drowning my sorrows in alcohol. I was consumed by anger, resentment, and a burning desire for revenge. I wanted Bronte to suffer, to feel the same pain and humiliation that she had inflicted on me. I considered various schemes, ranging from exposing her affair to her colleagues and clients to draining her bank account and disappearing. But I knew that none of those things would truly make me feel better. They would only perpetuate the cycle of pain and destruction. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon Lysander's profile. He was posting pictures of himself and Bronte, vacationing in Hawaii, attending fancy parties, and generally living the high life. The sight of them together, flaunting their happiness, filled me with rage. I wanted to lash out, to confront them, to tear their world apart. But then I had an idea. A much more subtle and ultimately more satisfying form of revenge. I remembered that Lysander had a reputation for being a womanizer, a player who had a long history of cheating on his partners. I also knew that his wife, Coralia, was a kind and gentle woman who loved him deeply. I decided to reach out to her, to tell her the truth about her husband's affair with Bronte. It was a difficult decision. I knew that I would be causing her immense pain, but I also believed that she deserved to know the truth. She deserved to be free from the lies and deception. I sent her an anonymous email, providing her with details about Lysander's affair with Bronte, including dates, times, and locations. I included photographs and text messages as evidence. A few days later, I received a response from Coralia. She thanked me for my courage and honesty, and she confirmed that she had confronted Lysander with the evidence. He had denied everything at first, but eventually he broke down and confessed. Coralia was devastated, but she was also determined to leave him. She filed for divorce and kicked him out of the house. I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that Lysander's life was in ruins. He had lost his wife, his home, and his reputation. He was now facing the consequences of his actions. But my revenge didn't stop there. I also decided to expose Bronte's affair to her colleagues and clients. I sent an anonymous email to everyone in her company, detailing her affair with Lysander and highlighting her unethical behavior. I included photographs and text messages as evidence. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Bronte was ostracized by her colleagues, shunned by her clients, and ultimately fired from her job. Her career, which she had worked so hard to build, was destroyed. She was now facing the consequences of her actions. I watched from afar as her life crumbled around her. I felt a sense of vindication, knowing that she was finally paying the price for her betrayal. But as the dust settled, I realized that my revenge had come at a cost. I had spent months consumed by anger and resentment, plotting and scheming, and ultimately I had become a bitter and vengeful person. I had lost sight of my own values and principles, and I had allowed Bronte's actions to define me. I realized that I needed to move on, to let go of the past, and to focus on rebuilding my own life. It wasn't easy. The pain of betrayal lingered and the scars of the divorce remained, but I slowly began to heal. I started exercising, eating healthy, and spending time with friends and family. I reconnected with old hobbies and discovered new interests. I focused on my work, and I eventually earned the promotion that I had been working towards. I learned to forgive Bronte, not for her sake, but for my own. I realized that holding onto anger and resentment was only hurting me. Years have passed since the divorce. I am now in a happy and fulfilling relationship with a wonderful woman named Imogen. We share a deep connection based on trust, honesty, and mutual respect. I have learned from my past mistakes, and I am committed to building a healthy and lasting relationship. Bronte, on the other hand, is still struggling. She has bounced from job to job, unable to hold down a stable position. She has had a series of failed relationships, and she is now living a lonely and isolated life. I occasionally hear about her through mutual friends, and I feel a sense of pity for her. She made her choices, and she is now living with the consequences. Looking back, I realize that the most important lesson I learned from this experience is that revenge is never the answer. It may provide a temporary sense of satisfaction, but it ultimately leads to more pain and suffering. The best way to heal from betrayal is to forgive, to let go, and to focus on building a better future, to find happiness and to find peace. That is the true revenge. That is what gives you a life worth living, and that is how you move on.